Very good evening to you. I hope you are all doing well. And I also hope you have listened to my previous lecture where we have concluded Milton's Paradise Lost, the literary analysis, um, literal analysis of the text, which we have already finished. And now we are going into the analysis part one by one. I will be relating the significance of Paradise Lost in different aspects. So let us start that. Let me share the screen for you. Yeah, while I am sharing the screen, some points are highlighted in the text that I am sharing with you. So those points you can just note down and make a notes out of those points so that you can answer your questions in the examinations. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, this is what. So, first thing I want to discuss regarding the analysis of Paradise Lost is its history behind writing this Paradise Lost. In general, of course, we consider Paradise Lost as a great epic which is having universal qualities, and of course, it is dealing with the universal themes, etc. Because it's considered as not a national epic but a very universal epic where the themes of universal interest are dealt in. So, how far it is correct to consider it as an epic having universal qualities, etc., or is it having any uh, influence of the period in which it was written? Such questions we'll be discussing in this lecture. Actually, these questions actually come because we all know or we all agree that literature is a product of the society. Okay. So literature comes out of the society in from which the society, the writer will be writing. A writer, of course, the poet also of course belongs to a particular society, and while writing from that society he will be influenced by the social conditions or political conditions or religious conditions, and to some extent economic conditions and ideological, cultural, etc. So in this context we have to discuss, so what is the background for writing this epic Paradise Lost for Milton, especially for John Milton? So what influenced him to write this, and can we conclude only that this is only the universal or religious interest, etc.? Let us see. So, for all its timeless universal qualities, Paradise Lost is also a product of its time. So, out of no, we the universal qualities that Paradise Lost is having is one aspect. Of course, we can't deny that the epic is timeless. It, in the sense, it though written during the Puritan age, it is applicable even now also. So, if you take it religiously, or if we take it in the general ethical sense also, of course, it is time tested, and of course it is universal, and it is applicable whatever themes the poet, the Milton, has dealt with in the Paradise Lost, of course are what do you say, relevant for us also, for us now. Yet besides these timeless universal qualities, we have to consider that Paradise Lost is no doubt a product of the time in which it was produced. And what was the time? See, they here you have to recollect what I have discussed regarding the works of Milton or greatness of Milton as a Puritan poet, or Milton as a Puritan poet, how he was influenced, and how he wrote pamphlets. What is his stand amidst the religious rivalry that was going on during his time in England. So we have to consider that also. So when we go into those details, we have to consider Paradise Lost not only as a product of its time, but also as a product of English Protestant imagination at work in its time. So the Puritanism is a form of Protestantism only. No, Protestantism in the form of Anglican Church was prevalent, as we have seen that was during the time of Henry VIII, when the Reformation took place, where the Catholic Church has got divided into two, and Pope as the head of the religious institution was removed, and King himself declared as the head, and Henry VIII has established the Protestant Anglican Church. So after that, we could see that the history of England, of course, is torn between these two major religious groups, that is Catholicism and the Protestantism. So in spite of all the timeless and universal qualities that Paradise Lost offers, we have to consider it as a product of its time. And to be very specific, we have to consider the epic as a product of English Protestant imagination. So it is actually because the Protestant ideals, or the Protestant way of worshipping God, or the Protestant way of considering God and his presence, valuing God, etc., is what is the base for Milton's Paradise Lost. Uniquely for a poem which now enjoys high canonical status. Of course, now it is written in 18th century, 17th century, and even now we know that it is enjoying the canonical status. Canon being the canon, actually canon is a big gun, okay, and big gun here actually canonization is, as we have seen already, in John Donne's poem, is putting someone into an important order of service of God, etc., or making them as saints of our religion, etc. So canonical means actually it is having a big place in the whole history of English literature. Okay, so in that way, if we consider Paradise Lost, of course, remains fundamentally a national English Protestant epic. And this was born out of the political and religious upheavals of the 17th century. And as we could see that in Paradise Lost, book 7, in Milton mentions. Okay, though although its poet assumes the mantle of universal prophecy. Of course, we have seen in the book 1, Invocation of the Muse, how Milton wants to reveal about the universe, the secrets of the universe, how the genesis of man, or the genesis of this earth, or how Saturn was thrown out of the hell, heaven, and also how he tempted the first man and women, that is Adam and Eve, etc. So this is all the universal prophecy. Mantle means actually cover. Mantle is like a cloth that is hanged in front of us, but here it is a cover. So there we can see that though Milton is proclaiming that it is universal in its theme, the epic situates its abstract theological and philosophical ideas in the vicissitudes of rebellion and conflict. So, but though, in spite of all the universal theme that Milton proclaimed that he is going to deal with in the poem, we can see that the epic is about the rebellion and conflict. See, who rebelled against whom? Saturn rebelled against God. And between whom is the conflict? Between God and Saturn. So, in spite of the universal prophecy, or in spite of the, what do you say, Christian theological background for the epic, we can see that it is a text of rebellion and conflict. And the book one, of course, gives us a good example of the rebellion of Saturn, how rebellious Saturn is, and how he is nurturing that conflict with God. So the book one, of course, is the best example to present the rebellious spirit of Saturn. So it is not only in that, but in some in the following rest of the books also you will find that. So of course we can conclude that in spite of the prophecy made, revealed by Milton, that he is going to write about universal things, about the universe. That is why he is repeatedly requesting the muse to the Holy Spirit. From muse to he shifts to the Holy Spirit, and keeps on requesting that you were brooding, and you were there from the beginning, and please let me know, like how Israelites were led out of the bondage, etc. And all those things he keeps bringing into his text. Yet, the tinge of rebellion and conflict, of course, remains in the Paradise Lost. And as played out in a very specific point in time within a specifically English political historical narrative of civil war, regicide, and the precarious English dream of a republican commonwealth. See, what is this rebellion actually? In a way, we can take Saturn's rebellion against God as the people in England, or a group of people in England raising against King Charles. Okay, and then what happened? Of course, unlike the victorious God is victorious in the war in Paradise Lost, but here Charles I was killed. So we can't ignore the political and historical overtones of civil war, killing of what you say, Charles I, and then establishing the Commonwealth. Of course, that is there. See, actually, the rebellious spirit of Saturn, we can see that it is attributed to the in the actual history to the Cromwell. Okay, Cromwell, who was rising against the king, and then the killing of the king also. And we know Milton was taking the side of the Commonwealths. And maybe perhaps that is why Milton, while portraying the character of Saturn, who rebelled against God, it is a rebellion against the servitude, etc. Unconsciously, he was with Saturn, though he was writing, of course, in the guise of universal prophecy. Okay, after this, we have one more point to touch, that is, in Milton's eyes, the failure of the English Revolution and the Republican enterprise, which followed the civil war between the forces of Parliament and Charles I, was just another chapter in the triumph of tyranny over human weakness. And so, perhaps because of his circumstances, because of the circumstances of the revolution and the republican enterprise, and of course killing of Charles I, and then Cromwell also No, I think Cromwell is removed from power, and then parliamentarian type of government has gone, and restoration. Restoration means restoring the king to the throne again. Okay, they all those things of course have an influence in the mind of Milton, and in his lifetime, Milton was very much against the tyranny that is in the form of monarchy. Okay, and yeah, of course, for Milton, tyranny took many forms, and he shows that in his writings also. And we can see at times he refers to God in book 1 of Paradise Lost as the great monarch. Okay, ruling without any what you say, without anyone to question him, happily ruling, okay, tyrannically, etc., those words. So this is the influence of the what you call um, circumstances, historical, religious, political circumstances that have taken place in the narration of the epic that is Paradise Lost. Okay, this is because of the situations prevailing in the country, the religious, etc. There was the spiritual struggle between liberty and tyranny. And of course, this struggle in Milton's actual life was also there, and we could see this in Paradise Lost. See, the struggle between liberty and tyranny is the single most consistent principle behind Milton's political and ideological commitments. So he was always struggling, to which he should actually attach, etc. And Milton's then this struggle is the main topic or subject in many of his poems also, and that is so in Paradise Lost. Especially, it is the conceptual axis around which the epic poetry gravitates. In the sense, here the writer of the text actually is saying that Paradise Lost revolves around the spiritual struggle of Milton. Okay, the axis, one angle where the everything will be revolving around. So the spiritual struggle is the basis for writing the Paradise Lost. That is why here and there we will be experiencing that Milton is bending towards Saturn, because Saturn is made the symbol of a rebellion, and the symbol of seeking freedom, free will, etc. So, the spiritual struggle that was there in the society, and that was advocated by Milton himself, has become his subject for poetry, and the same is there in the Paradise Lost. No, the point is, in spite of all the universal qualities that the epic exhibits, we have to read it against the backdrop of this politico-religious history that was existing in England during Milton's time, and by which Milton was also very much influenced. And in his introduction, I told you that how he wrote many pamphlets against many topics, and he was deadly against the Roman Catholic Church, and he very antagonistic towards the fathers who were misusing the religion, okay, in their hands, the religion in their hands to get things done in a different way. So that was there. So we have to understand that Milton actually wrote Paradise Lost to give a vent out for the spiritual struggle that was there in his mind. Okay. Um, so instead of arriving at a conclusion that Paradise Lost is universal in its themes, etc. As students of literature at postgraduate level, it is very important to read this poem, that is Paradise Lost, against the historical forces that influenced Milton to write this epic, that is Paradise Lost. Okay. John Milton, who came to write Paradise Lost, was a radical revolutionary in the full sense of the term. So we know how he was radical in writing pamphlets. The pamphlets were written earlier than Paradise Lost. So by the time John Milton started writing Paradise Lost, he was very much a radical revolutionary. A revolutionary where in his poetry, politics, and religious ideology also. And of course, but he was not very static, in the sense he didn't stick to one thing always in his life. Of course, in biographies of Milton that were written by different scholars, it was mentioned. By the time he came to write the Paradise Lost, the innocence was gone, and with it a willingness to compromise. So, to certain extent, when he came to write the Paradise Lost, the vigor and the stubbornness that was there in his writings, for example, in his pamphlets, to argue for some point in which he believes was not there when he was writing the Paradise Lost. In fact, see, accepting God as the Almighty, whom now and then he keeps referring that he is a monarch, God is monarch, etc. In a way, is like Milton accepting the monarchy in the country also, because after the restoration, Milton has witnessed. Milton, of course, had witnessed the Cromwell's government, the regicide. Regicide means killing of the king, Charles I. Regicide of Charles I, Cromwell coming to the throne, and then parliamentary type of government, and then again restoration also. So, in all these three phases, we see Milton's evolving personality. First he was a very ferociously rebellious man who was supporting the cause of the parliamentary type of government. But after the parliamentary type of government has come in, he felt that it is also not up to the mark according to his thinking or his beliefs, etc. And then, of course, though he did not actually support all decisions that were taken by the parliamentary type of government, he was also against the Presbyterian religious reforms, etc. And then he was advocating his own ideas. In a way, we have to consider that Milton was oscillating between one or the other. Oscillating means changing his opinions or not able to decide which is good, what to follow continuously, etc. is always there. So throughout his life, Milton never stood by a history unfolded around him. He staked his claim in shaping it. Of course, Milton, though he was oscillating, he actually was never idle. He was taking ideas, and he was actually claiming to shape the ideology or the thoughts of people. He was for some time an independent pamphleteer. As the Secretary for Foreign Tongues for Cromwell's Council of State, or as a self styled poet prophet, Milton always took an active interest in what he perceived to be his bounden Christian duty to help reform and mold the English church and state. So, they, with the what you call circumstances that were taking place, or situations that were taking place, and the circumstances that were existing or surrounding him, Milton was not happy completely, but he never was idle, and he was always involving himself into the shaping of English church, state, or literature, etc. So, and defend the reformed Christians' inalienable right to pursue and defend liberty. So, he always kept on arguing for the liberty or independence, freedom of speech, or freedom to worship in a way what they believe is good, etc. And so, whether it be in England or abroad, he was always arguing for a kind of freedom only. So it is in this spirit that for 20 years, roughly 1640 to 1660, Milton put aside his major poetic endeavors and launched himself into the public arena against the background of the Civil War and an emerging republic as a pamphleteer, polemicist, staking his domestic and international reputation as a defender of regicide and the English republican cause. So we see Milton, of course, participating in the public life, political life, religious life. In more, if we want to add social life also, in a very active manner. And so for 20 years, he put his poetic career beside, and he was engaging himself actively in all the political, social, religious issues of the country, his country. And that is what had shaped his mind. Milton was growing. Milton's growing sense of disillusionment with temporal politics took several decades to develop and was attendant, in fact, on a number of deeply unsettling national and personal crises. But Milton, though he was active, at some times he was not very convenient or very comfortable with the changes that were taking place around him. Sometime he was with Presbyterianism, but later he opposed the rigid models of religion, and later he argued for the independence of the parish members. Parish is a geographical place where a group of people belonging to one particular church reside. So we have this concept in Chaucer's prologue, we have already seen. So he argued for the independence of the parish members, and he also argued for worshipping according to their conscience, their self-conscience, actually. So, but even after the Cromwell's government, what Milton aimed for did not happen. Say, at the larger level of the nation, of politics, and also religion. So, with all these, with all these things that Milton was into, his religious ideas, his ideas on politics, his ideas on the nation or state, etc., or his ideas on the individual, his freedom, his free will, and how they should worship God, etc. It's very important to know that is what has given birth to this epic, that is Paradise Lost. It is not simply his advocating of what you call theodicy or theology, God's one religion, but it is because of the struggle. So it is important to remember, however, that The classically educated humanist Milton was never a Puritan in the conventional sense, either in his theology as well as in his psychology. So, a very well read man, of course, Milton. He read Greek, Latin very much, okay, and he traveled also to many places, and he was always interpreting the scriptures from a novel way. Which was in contrast to the existing Presbyterian or other theological ideas, and so he developed his own view of the religion, and that is why sometimes he hesitated to support dogmatism of you know Presbyterians, and he was not sympathetic for the religious enthusiasm and mysticism that was growing under the banner of liberty of conscience. So what he advocated was being taken into the extreme levels in the religious order that Milton did not like. That is why by the end of his life, I think he was not neither a supporter of Puritans or what do you say Protestants, nor against the Catholicism. So in this, in I know he this is the evolution of his mind that we could see. So he has his own idea of religion. So for Milton, being an independent in political and ecclesiastical matters increasingly came to mean being alone. So politically also, his ideology did not work. So because they wanted what do you say parliamentarian type of government in the Cromwell, in the form of Cromwell, but that also collapsed, and again restoration took place. Restoration is restoring the king to the throne. That is what happened in England, with which, of course, Milton is not happy at political situations and ecclesiastical matters, that is, religious matters, of course, too much of Presbyterianism, too much of liberal conscience that led to mysticism, etc., religious enthusiasm, a kind of fanatic religious enthusiasm, etc. Of course, he was not able to tolerate, and the result is he was alone. Even when he could agree with or draw inspiration from the spiritual or political ideas of this or that sectarian group on the religious fringe of English society. So, this religious conflict that was existing, okay, in England during his time is what the ground for writing um, Paradise Lost for Milton. Besides the universal prophecy that he makes in his epic while he was invocating the muse. He actually gives myth of Orpheus. The Orpheus is a mythical character. He who is a poet and singer. Of course, Orpheus, of course, is very great musician. Also, he could move stones also with his music. But finally, he was torn to pieces by the frenzied handmaidens of Bacchus for preferring the rational, refined music of Apollo. So, means what? The main speaker, okay, on whose ideas the what do you say the ideas behind the theological sect or a group of religion was formed, but later he was left alone because he could not accept the he could not accept the extremities that were there in either religion or politics. So that with all the discussion, what I am trying to drive into your minds is that we should not consider Paradise Lost as a text that is written purely out of the religious, what do you say, religious mind of Milton. So it is a combination of many other things also. Okay, the things are his struggle, Milton's own life, and his struggle with politics, religion, with the changing beliefs, with the changing ideologies, etc. So to think, we have to consider that a sense of political, personal, and finally intellectual solitude and loss created then the imaginative conditions which gave birth to Paradise Lost. See, politically, personally, and intellectually, he was alone. See, politically, he believed in parliamentarian type of government, but restoration took place. Personally, his life was not so happy. He married thrice, and of course, twice he divorced, and thrice, third time he married. And his financial situation, due to the restoration, change in the form of the government, was also not good. And of course, intellectually, what happened, he nurtured many ideas of freedom of speech, or freedom to worship, and liberal conscience, etc. Many that he contributed, but there also he was not left with any group, because the group was leading to different extremisms, which he never liked. So finally, what happened in all these three aspects, that is personal, political, intellectual, he became alone, and this loss is what has created the imaginative conditions, which gave birth to Paradise Lost. Of course, when we read Paradise Lost, we will never be, fail to praise the imagination of the poet, especially Milton, and that our praise even more becomes even more when we come to know that Milton is blind, totally blind, when he was writing Paradise Lost. And while he was dictating, his wife wrote it. Third wife wrote it. So there, of course, we have all the admiration and appreciation for the, what you say, style in which Milton wrote Paradise Lost, and a very picturesque style also, images, the style which is filled with imagery. Okay, using epic similes, and using the language in a grand style. Okay, the grand style of Milton is also a very important topic for us. So we can't stop praising him for all the great qualities that the Paradise Lost exhibits. And of course, we have also take acknowledge that this is not a purely religious affair for Milton, but it is a combination of his political, personal, intellectual, and religious situations which he had been through, and which shaped his mind. Thereby, we had the product like the Paradise Lost. All of Milton's gifts as poet, polemicist, scholar, teacher, and thinker came together in a poetic creation alive with his polemical instincts and rhetorical flair, but also with his tremendous sympathy as an educator and deep abstract thinker. So we know in Paradise Lost we have amalgamation or a synthesis of many sided personality of Milton that will come, that is evident when we read Milton's Paradise Lost. Okay, the result is a poem that reaches to heaven and hell and all that stretches between them. So, with all these, with all the synthesis of different areas of his life, different aspects of his thought, and different mm, ideologies that he framed for himself. And of course, he scattered also. We have this great epic, the result, the great epic that spans from heaven to hell and moves between them, and of course comes to the earth also. And it actually is a great poem. It stretches between hell, heaven, but which remains forever rooted in the very English earth of politics. No doubt the poem, when we divide it from the historical, political, ideological conditions, of course, appears to be universal. But the writer here says that we cannot detach the epic from the English earth or English earth means Britain, okay, English as a nation, because that is by and large a very national epic. Though it has universal overtones, removing or cutting down all these peripheral issues on which about which Milton was worried, and all those were incorporated into this epic. We have to remove all those and see that the epic, of course, is a universal in its idea, in its conception, in its themes, etc. So this is what I have to share regarding the historical background, okay, of the epic, the great epic that is Milton's Paradise Lost. And tomorrow's class we will try to discuss some other aspect of this Paradise Lost. I am closing the lecture. Okay, I hope you will listen to it and try to get back to me after you listen to the lecture. None of you are interacting. I don't know how many of you are listening. Please try to listen regularly. Okay, bye. Have a nice time.